Hello and welcome to another episode of California Unfiltered. Before we get started, please like and please subscribe. Your ability to like this and subscribe this, your ability to tell other people, allows us to get this show out to more people. We're providing a unique perspective on California and America, but mostly California, that you're just not finding anywhere else, and we provide a lot of hard data for it. It's difficult to do, and we appreciate all the support you can give us. Okay, getting right into it. So this was kind of a slow news week. So what we're going to do is we're going to do mostly a focus on CalExit for just this episode. The next episodes will go back to the typical pattern of California news and then updates on CalExit. For this one, we're going to do tough questions from skeptics / trolls, whatever word you want to use, of people who have brought up problems with CalExit. So we had a weekly meeting about a week ago, and there was somebody who asked like 13 different questions, each one trying to knock the idea of CalExit out. We defeated all of them. I'll walk you through that. Additionally, we're going to be going over some of the answers with another person who was part of a Newsweek article called California Secession Has No Credibility. But the anger is real, published February 1st, 2025 by Shane Croucher for Newsweek. I'm not going to give the person's name. It's on my channel. Anyways, we're dealing with somebody who came to a CalExit meeting and was trying to show that this was a bad idea and just kept lobbing question after question after question, and we knocked them all down. Additionally, I'm going to cover some of the highlights from somebody that I was talking to who had already written a piece in the news about how CalExit is, what's the word? No credibility, but the anger is real. What you're going to find out, though, basically, is that the person who wrote the article on California Secession Has No Credibility, or at least one of the people who was interviewed in that, had absolutely no idea of all the key facts. It's painfully obvious on my channel on YouTube, the interview that I did this week. They were so sure of their opinion, and you could just see they hadn't heard any of the key facts and were completely unaware of all of them. But they were sure of their opinion. Okay, so let's get into it. First, we're going to cover the CalExit meeting. So we had someone, some people call it a troll, some people call it legitimate questions. I'm always of the opinion of, if you have questions, let's answer them. And even if somebody was a troll, they came here to kind of embarrass us and make us look bad. What happened, though, was that we got a lot of feedback that was a great episode, and now even more people want to join CalExit. So when somebody comes to try to shoot down CalExit and they go, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? What about this? And you knock them all down, what happens is you turn an attack into a gift where people now, wow, this must be a good idea, because people who clearly don't like this idea and clearly are trying to take it down can't. And every single attack angle or question they have is shot down. So let's go over them. Going to do a little bit of a rapid fire, but you'll be able to follow along. So the first one was that with the Newsweek interview that I did, was he said, well, you know, there's a lot of patriotism in California, and Californians may not want to leave America because a lot of them see themselves as Americans. And I said, what's that based upon? And he goes, well, I've lived here for a while. And I said, well, I've lived here for a while too. There's additionally been polls that have shown that the least amount of patriotism of any region in America is youth in the West. That poll included Oregon, Washington, with California and Nevada. California is 3/4 of the population of all those states combined. So when we're looking at youth and in the West have the least patriotism, that means mostly California. He never heard of that poll and was shocked. I also pointed out that we had the highest number of cities who had ordered someone to take down the American flag. I've covered this many times. There's at least like 12 cities, maybe 20, that over the last decade have said, you can't have this American flag up and you need to take it down. Additionally, we're the only place that has active duty military who said they weren't going to salute the American flag in all of America. That was us. So the guy who said Californians are patriots and love America hadn't heard of any of that data, didn't know at all about any of that. Additionally, he did not know about how Californians were upset with Trump. He was very familiar with how Californians were upset with Newsom and with with Mayor Bass, but he was completely unaware of how Donald Trump said, even though you guys are dead and homeless, I'm not sure I want to help you out, and how that had galvanized a huge amount of support for CalExit. And that the amount of support for CalExit was not when the initiative came out. It was after Trump said to fellow Americans, when people are dead and homeless and destitute, I don't know if I want to help because I don't like you. If you need any evidence of that, you can go to my channel. You can go to the CalExit channel. We just loaded up a new video from Breaking Points where Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty, they're speaking about how Trump insulted a governor from Maine, I believe, a female governor from Maine. Trump wanted her to get rid of the transgender thing. She said, I'll see you in court. So it was that episode of Breaking Points. In there, they backed up our point that Trump had done that he had basically told fellow Americans, Californians, I don't know if I want to help after a national disaster, and that was new and different and had never been seen before in American history, which is something we did. So thanks, Crystal and Sagar Breaking Points, for backing us up on that one. Secondly, in this interview, the person who said, CalExit has no credibility said, well, how are you going to get all the support? Doesn't have that much support. I informed them of the Reuters, Ipsos, and separately Stanford Little Hoover Institute polls in 2017, both of them February, January 2017, that showed 32% for full-blown secession and additional 15.7% are willing to discuss it, which brings you up to about 47 or 48%, which is in the margin of error of 51%. So two polls in 2017 actually showed that Californians were within the margin of error of 51%, or a dominant percentage in order to win. Obviously, he hadn't heard any of that. He immediately came back with, well, it'll take 70% to win. And I could tell that where it was going because he started to confuse the ballot initiative with the actual vote. I was talking about the vote, and you need 51%, which is a controlling majority. Although ours is set at 55%, I think we can get an additional 4%. Then he immediately went to the ballots. So you want to get more ballots than the actual requirement because some of them won't qualify. So I just found that interesting that he was talking about something. I presented the polls, and then he immediately goes, well, that doesn't matter because of something. And he confused the ballot with the vote. So anyways, by the way, not going to go into names. He was a very well-educated man. He had a good heart, and he was willing to participate and come on the show, and I have a lot of respect for that, a lot of respect. He has a great collection of presidential posters, by the way. The other thing he said was that it was unrealistic because it costs millions of dollars to hire signature gatherers, and that's really the only way in California that you get signature initiatives qualified. He was saying that as if we didn't know that. We've been saying that for the last 7 years. We'd been talking about angel donors who came in from one from New York for the anti-gay marriage initiative, and Sean Parker, who did Napster, came in for marijuana and pointed that out. Additionally, we had pointed out that this CalExit initiative now has a multimillionaire attached to it. His name is Sir Dr. Xavier Mitchell. That's been out for about a month and a half. Had no idea that a millionaire or a multimillionaire who owns 6 publicly traded companies, a nonprofit recognized throughout California, and is personal friends with Shirley Weber, the 3rd highest ranking California politician. Didn't know about that. And when I pointed it out, he kind of took a step back like, oh my God, they actually have it. Then he said, well, didn't things, maybe it wasn't him. It might've been him. But one of the questions that comes up a lot is, didn't you try this in 2016 and fail? I mean, don't you guys know that you're a failure? And I said, right, just like gay marriage and marijuana. What? Gay marriage and marijuana took 3 attempts through initiatives to become legal. It didn't happen the first time. It didn't happen the first try. It took them both about 10 years, multiple attempts with multiple groups and multiple initiatives. And every expert in California laughed at them and said, well, you can't get organized. You can't get everybody on the same page. You have multiple initiatives. You filed this multiple times. It's never going to happen. And every single expert was wrong. I'm old enough to remember. I was there when it was happening. Gay marriage will never happen. Marijuana will never be legalized. Everybody's wrong. So here we are with another initiative. Well, CalExit won't pass. Based on what? Two other controversial ideas that had to go at it multiple times over close to a decade and then inevitably won. Completely unaware of these examples. Also caught off guard by them. The other one was that secession is legal. The person who was in this article saying it has no credibility had absolutely no idea that there is a Supreme Court case called Texas versus White, that it does say you can secede with consent to the states, and that it does not say the amendment process, that this decision came from Salmon Chase, who was personally appointed by Abraham Lincoln about 150 years after the formation of America, which means if they meant the amendment process for consent, why didn't they say it in the Supreme Court ruling when the amendment process had been known for about 150 years prior? When I say states can secede with consent, I meant only through the amendment process, but I didn't say that. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Additionally, he was not aware of Erwin Chemerinsky and how Chemerinsky had made that famous prediction. Although I think he did know Chemerinsky, but he didn't know that Chemerinsky had made the prediction that a simple majority vote of Congress could be all that's required in order for California to legally secede. Additionally, this person's opinion was, well, you know, Republicans will never let California go because there's so much money. And I had to point out that when Trump was president, the Republicans literally had a conference in Washington, D.C., where they said California is the welfare queen and America subsidizes them. Totally not true, completely opposite of the truth. The Los Angeles Times and the San Francisco Chronicle had their editorial boards basically respond, and I mean flabbergasted response, like, how the hell could the National Republicans get it so wrong and say this nationally and not walk it back and walk around with straight faces? Well, they did, because they live in a bubble. Again, he had never heard of that. So the question becomes, I mean, for me, is you're part of an article saying CalExit has no credibility. That seems to be your opinion. And then I have to educate you on the patriotism of California, how Trump encouraged CalExit with the Palisades thing, the support for CalExit in 2017, the attachment of a millionaire, the fact that CalExit is in line with the two successful attempts at marijuana and gay marriage, that secession's legal, and that the Republicans don't know that California is actually a donor state. So that's like 10 things. So let's go on to another person. This person was at a CalExit meeting, and they said that they had a variety of questions, and they were trying to knock us out. So first thing they said was that CalExit will require a two-state solution. Northern California is totally different from Southern California, and 48 counties in the north won't be on with this. And we pointed out that's completely not true. So the Bay Area, Sacramento, Fresno, the coast, Los Angeles, San Diego, Orange County all had supporters for CalExit. Additionally, the only place where Trump supporters are in the majority is in the top 1/5 of California or the forested areas. That is not 48 counties. That's maybe like 15 to 20. Additionally, the forested areas do not have economic impact in California. So great, you got Trump people who support Trump in regions of California where people basically don't live there and it doesn't make anything for the economy. And so they don't have the numbers to vote us out. If you're talking about the other Trump supporters, I pointed out that they're mixed in with and overwhelmed by liberals in the Bay Area and Los Angeles, and they'll never leave because their families are here. He also pointed out that polls are not ballots. And I said, because I was pointing out how there were polls showing support for CalExit. And he goes, well, those aren't the same as ballots. And I pointed out, well, actually, while that's technically true, it's basically meaningless because in politics, all politicians since Bill Clinton in the 1990s use polls to indicate what laws they should propose on the ballot. Then they said, well, Mexicans who left Mexico to come to the USA won't want to leave the USA. And I said, you must not know Mexican people. All Latin people know that California and the Southwest was stolen from them by America under the guise of white supremacy. Every single Latino is taught that. This person was completely unaware of that. Then they said, well, you know, nobody's going to back a CalExit because it will require critical thinking of what's really entailed in this and nobody's going to vote for it. And we said, totally wrong. We're This initiative requires a blue ribbon panel, an official state investigation to be done on this, and a report to be publicized to educate the California voters before they go in. So we're totally counting on people to look into this more critically. And we think they'll back CalExit for the reasons that I'm showing you now. Every time we go over the facts, people say, I didn't know that, and they join on. And every time we go over the facts, people who said I'm against this are constantly educated. Then he said, well, gas prices are coming down, and the economy matters a lot to people. So Trump's president. Californians aren't going to want to leave Trump because he's improving the economy. And I said, totally wrong. California loses money being part of America. If California was independent from America, we wouldn't have to do business income taxes, or businesses wouldn't have to do 50% of their regulatory overhead, meaning federal regulations. That's a boom for business. We'd be making more in international sales, and we'd be able to make international sales faster. Additionally, we'd no longer be a donor state. You add that all up together, the economy gets better. This person doubled down going, well, rent's high and it's hard to live here. Exactly, and that's why CalExit's a solution. If we're not overtaxing ourselves and we can lower the tax rate, that makes it easier to live here. If we can provide for more social services without raising the taxes on ourselves, as we have to do, it's easier to live here, which means CalExit will reduce the amount you have to pay. And CalExit reduces the difficulty for businesses. And CalExit grows the economy. And CalExit makes you have more money in your pocket. Didn't know that. Okay. Then they said, well, this will never happen because it has to pass both the House and the Senate, and every state has to vote for it, and the president. Again, totally wrong, ignorant. So there is a Supreme Court case, Texas versus White. It says consent of the states. It does not say the amendment process. Period. End of story. The only people who can say something means the amendment process is the sorry, phone call. I'll wrap this up. The only people who can say the amendment process means is what Texas versus White means is the Supreme Court of California. So you don't have to have the amendment process. You don't. You could have a simple majority vote. That's what Erwin Chemerinsky said. Secondly, anybody saying you have to have the amendment process is lying. It's not in Texas versus White, and only the Supreme Court could say that it has to be. Oh, there was another one. You guys are, there's a lot of Trump voters in California. He got 6 million votes. He got a lot of Latinos voting for him. Yeah, Latinos voted for Trump because of economics, not because they like being called racist. They did the same thing with the recall election against Gavin Newsom. So they've already shown this pattern. I can't tell you the number of people I've had to educate about that. Additionally, like I said, yeah, there's a lot of Trump voters here. They are overwhelmed in the cities they live in. And the only areas where the majority is the far north, 1/5, and the forests, where they're so low density and so economically unimportant, they really have no pull. Finally, he said, look, you guys are overreacting. Trump's only been here for 2 months and you're trying to leave. Well, we remember what Trump did in 2016, and it was horrifying. Additionally, when Trump comes back this time, he said, I'm going to be a dictator on day one. I'm looking for the enemies within. You'll never have to vote for another election again, etc. So there's everything there to know that this is still a horrible man. So those are some of the answers to some of the questions that we got from 2 different critics, and we addressed those pretty good, I think. We'll leave it there. Check us out, like, subscribe, and we'll see you soon at California Unfiltered. Thank you.